What role does setting have in emotions? It doesn't matter where you set your story for that emotional impact. I'm going to argue that yes, it does, and I'm going to show you why. So let's take a look at that. Welcome to the Julie Amante channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julie Amante, a women's fiction author, and we have been going over a series of emotion, how to use emotion for the most impact and things to avoid when you are writing emotional scenes. So today we're going to end with setting. What impact does setting have to emotions? Like, we know it has, we know that setting is important for plot, right? Plot development and for story development in general, but it doesn't matter for emotion. And it does. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a movie called The Marriage Story. It was on Netflix, so if you don't have Netflix, you might not have seen it. But it was basically about a couple whose marriage is falling apart. And they're both actors, play actors, and she decides that she's moving to California with her child, and there's a huge battle for the child, and he's in New York, she's in LA, and they each end up hiring lawyers. It becomes this very nasty divorce. And there's this one scene in her apartment, her rented apartment, where they're yelling and screaming at each other. And you can, if you don't have Netflix, just go to, I'm not quite sure, YouTube. I'm kind of new to creating videos on YouTube, and I think that YouTube frowns on linking other people's videos. I'm not quite sure how they feel about that in the description. I'll look into that. If I'm allowed to do that, I will go ahead and do that. I think I can. I just think you can't use other people's videos within your own video. I don't know. I'm not, I'm not an expert on what's allowed and what's not allowed. But you don't need me to link it. Just go to YouTube and just write The Marriage Story fight scene, and it will pop up. And I will actually link my blog, and on my blog I do have the link to that YouTube video. So anyhow, it's worth watching because of the emotions. These two actors, so it's Scarlett Johansson and I don't remember the male actor's name, but they have this just almost painful fight scene where they're screaming and yelling at each other and saying, just really, really mean things about I never loved you, and I am disgusted by you. And, it ends with him just screaming, saying something like, every day he wakes up wishing she'd have this horrible accident or horrible disease and just die. And then when he says that, he realizes, just how horrific it is what he just said. And he breaks down and starts to cry, and even she's like shocked that he went that far to say something like that, and she actually goes and comforts him a little bit. Okay, so could this scene have happened anywhere? Like, could they have been having lunch? Well, no, right? Because they wouldn't have been honest. They wouldn't have had this let everything out and yell and say all these things that they apparently had to say to each other. And it couldn't have been with anybody and no other audience. In fact, they placed him in this little apartment. She's living in this small apartment, white walls, and he's pacing the whole time. He's yelling and screaming. He's going from this side to that side, and at one point he punches the wall, and you can feel how constricted he feels by this marriage and being in this room with her. So it's perfect. The scene is perfect because he feels uncomfortable. He feels constricted. He's yelling all these things about how his life was constricted, and how by being married to her he could have had all these millions of affairs, but he didn't because he loved her and he wanted to keep her. But he was young and he was in his 20s and he had all these opportunities and he missed out on that. So you can, the words that he's saying, the things that he's saying are matched by the way he's feeling physically and the place where they filmed this, the location. So to build emotion, to make the reader feel the emotion that you want to set your scenes in a place that matches that emotion, right? If it's a dark, scary place, why do you think they put, it's always the person, the victim, is running away from the bad guy that's chasing them. They always go to like the loneliest, emptiest, darkest alley, right? Or they go into the basement of a house where there's nobody, where they can't get out, where they're trapped. There's a reason for that. We all, as viewers, always say, well, of course, why is she doing this? Of course they're going to go into the darkest place. Well, of course they are, because the writer wants that. They want that feeling of you being scared, knowing that this person can't escape. They can't get out. They are in the dark alley. They're in the basement, and they're trapped. And so they want you to feel that that same feeling of being trapped as the character is. And as you're watching this or reading about this, that's the feeling that you're getting. So when you are creating your scenes, and especially that, again, that big, heavy, climactic moment, which we're all leading to, right? In our structure, we're all leading to this one moment, and that moment is going to be emotional. It's going to have probably very, very heightened emotions. There's going to be other ones, but that's going to be the big one. Where are you going to have that? Make sure you pay attention to the setting. If you go through and you're thinking, okay, it didn't have the emotional impact that I wanted it to have, setting might be part of it. So all the things we've talked about, take a look at the language. Can you change certain words? Or can you change the setting? Maybe it's in the wrong place. Maybe it's not having the impact that you want it to have because you put that scene where it shouldn't have happened. So it has to be logical for the plot, but it also should be logical for the emotions. It should bring out the emotions. It should help to heighten whatever emotion you want. The setting is another prop in a way, right? We talked about props, and the setting is another prop. It's where we're going to put our people, and we want that setting to help us to heighten the emotion, to make it worse for the characters. So one of the things we want to remember about the characters is sometimes like the best place to place the characters is where they're going to be the most uncomfortable, where it's going to be the worst for the character. In the marriage story, he is in this little tiny place where they're yelling at each other. They're not at a park where it's open, and no, they're in this little apartment yelling at each other by themselves. Nobody else is there. They're free to say the most horrible things that they can say because nobody else is listening but them. And so perfect for that story. So just keep that in mind when you're creating your scenes, your emotional scenes. Where are you placing your characters? Is it the worst place or the best place for that scene to happen? And what effect is that having on the emotions of the reader? Okay, so keep that in mind. So I hope that this series has helped you. I've tried to keep these sort of short so that it's not overwhelming, and that each one of these videos is bringing in just like one thing for you to think about. So I hope that you found that helpful, and that you enjoyed the series. So if you did, please like this video, like the other videos in the series, and share them with somebody who you think will benefit from listening to my tips. All right, so we're going to be moving on to a different topic next Friday. I hope you'll join me, and I will see you then.